Thanks for the follow, Batoshino. Sometimes I forget that I put the alerts on and then they happen and I'm like, tricky with this particular character. Well, her race, I mean, for all intents and purposes, she's an elf. But in this story, the elves are very kind of like elongated, their proportions. So they're taller than humans, and a lot of that is in these kind of like elongated appendages, and it's just like it's a little bit of a challenge to do it without them looking like I just drew them wrong. You know, you have to push it enough that it's clear it's on purpose, but maybe not so much that it's just super alien. So it's an interesting challenge. Thanks for the sub. What about Divinity? Yeah, I worked on the cover art. No. Was it Divinity? I feel like I worked on like early cover designs for that. But I don't actually know anything about it, other than that it's a game. So I'm just trying to get this gesture to feel right, and then I'll get into the details, because some of her clothing is going to be a bit baggy, and I just need to make sure that it's going to hang properly. Make sure I know what I'm doing. Sometimes I don't worry about it too much, and I'll just like go right for it. But I feel like that bit me in the ass last time. On this one, in the upper left was the initial one I did of her. And there are things I like, but then her head is too big in that it doesn't feel like she has elongated limbs. She doesn't feel that tall. So, and I want to tweak her clothing a bit. So, but there are things I like from this, which is why I have it here, to remind me, don't just get rid of everything. Let's give her a little bit of breathing room. almost there. I'm sure eventually at some point someone will be like, no, her arms feel a little too long, or her legs feel a little too long. But I'm saying it now. That's the point. I did it on purpose. Alright, let's oh, that's cool. Well, I will have to check those out then and hope that I'm doing something a little different. It's the hard part. I mean, these days, you know, new things, new properties are being created left and right. I work full time. I spend most of my time working, and then this stuff is just kind of whatever I can fit, you know, in my off hours. Today I'm taking some downtime just because I know I'm going to be putting time in over the weekend for work. So I was just like, fuck it, I'm going to take today off then, because then I will be going for like 6 or 7 days straight after this. So whatever. But point is, hard to keep track of everything. Like, really hard to keep track of everything that's out there. And I don't know, I almost feel like, to a degree, you can't really expect to come up with something completely new. And I actually don't think that you really have to. I think more than anything, you want to tell an interesting story, or have, sorry, not the story, the characters. You want the characters, specifically their personalities, their personas, to be interesting, because then I think you can tell any story you want. You can tell a story that's been told, you know, 1,000 times already, but the characters can make it feel new if they're interesting enough. So I don't always worry terribly about doing some kind of concept that's insanely original, as much as I focus on the actual personalities of the people in the story. So and hopefully along the way you can come up with something that feels a little new, or, you know, a little unique or something. It's hard to say, but maybe it would be nice. Alright, so you can see I'm tweaking her pose a bit. I gave her the staff originally, but realistically, like, her character is like a master with the spear, and I just feel like she should have her spear, not her staff, which means I have to change the pose, otherwise her spear would be going right through her head. That would be weird. Actually want her to have a little bit of a broader spear there. I'm also changing, I want to change her outfit just a little. Not terribly, but it does change it a bit, and changes her silhouette a bit. So just wanted to kind of take that into account. The other thing is, for the longest time, I had the tendency to do like very fitted clothing, right? And there's something fun about saying, okay, even though the story is loosely based on somewhere between the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, right? Somewhere in that range. Early Renaissance, not like late Renaissance. Technology is not that far advanced. Like sometimes it is fun to still play with like more modern cuts of clothing, but at the same time, I don't know. There are times that I'm like, no, I want to think about like, would they have actually been able to do that with the material? Would they have been able to get the material to be able to hold that kind of a shape, or could they actually get something that thin? Maybe not. It depends on what kind of material we're dealing with, but generally they didn't wear super fitted clothing back then. I'm not going to say generally. I don't know if they ever really did, with maybe few exceptions, but simply because they didn't have the technology to be able to do that. So now, it's funny because her particular culture is heavily based in Indian culture. So some of her shapes and then when I get into some of the textiles and stuff will be pulled from some of that stuff. I shouldn't say Indian culture, because even that is huge from state to state. Huge variety in India from state to state, but so I'm not pulling from one particular one, but however, she's really tall. So that's not very Indian. Although supposedly, and this is one of the things that I love in the Indian culture, is that they don't think of mythology in the same way that a lot of Western cultures do. To them, to us, I'm half Indian. I'm not full, so in many, many ways, I am so very Western, and then in some ways, I am very Indian. But they don't think of mythology in the same way, in that it's not a fictional thing to them. It's it happened. So a lot of times when you talk to like Hindu about the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, you know, any of those myths, they don't talk about them as a fictional thing. They talk about them as something that happened. You know, so according to them, during those times, the people were much taller. So they weren't, you know, the shorter people that we have today. In fact, they say that the men averaged around 7 feet. Of course, depending on how you want to break it down, there may not be any, you know, anthropological evidence to support that. But I like the thought of it, and so I figured, you know what, I'm gonna capitalize on that and explore that in some way. Now she does also have a sword. She's a weapons master. Not everyone in the story is. In fact, the main girl in the story is not. It's a tricky one. I want her cloak thing to be blowing in the wind a bit, but I don't want it to be going crazy. But still got to be enough that it feels intentional. Some of that we can address in the painting, but it's also a good idea to at least know where you're headed with it. And let's get, for some reason I went straight profile on her sword in that other one. I should know better. Should be at a slight angle. And we'll get into detailing that stuff out. The only hard part is when it's at this angle where you can see the hilt of it, the pommel of it, but you might see. I don't think you. I mean, if you did, you might see just the very end of the thing. So let's split the difference here and get the upper left piece actually is pretty loose, and I never finished it because there were things that were starting to bother me. Also, I had done it with the intention of then throwing her into a full piece, at which point I was going to finish her. So that piece, I don't think took very long. I can tell you exactly how long. Let's look. If I can remember which one I did first. I think it was this one. Let's look at the canvas info. Spent 5 hours? That seems very long to get to there. Let's see where we started. Yeah, that's about right. Started with the little... Yeah, okay. So I was figuring things out. Well, 5 5 hours still feels like a long time. I must have been like... I don't know what I was doing. I don't know why it took so long. Huh. I feel like that should have been like 3 hours of work or something, but I shouldn't say that too early though, because who knows, it might take me that long to get to that level this time. Don't toot your own horn just yet. No, some of this stuff, like, I just need the gesture for, and I'll detail out as I get there. The thing is, I'm not a fan of like defaulting to a totally orthographic perspective here, so I want to push that perspective a little bit more. So I just want to be looking down on her feet a little bit more. It's so easy to default to just like straight profiles of feet and looking at them head on and all that. Just because when you get into the subtlety of tilting that perspective, it can be a little bit of a pain in the ass. You got so many little forms there that are overlapping in different ways, but I do feel like it makes a difference. It can help us feel like we're maybe like kind of up on the character a little bit more. And I'll get into figuring out her feet when I get there. For now, I like where she's going. So let's figure out her details. Yeah, I don't know why the perspective on that other face got away from me a bit. So I think I rushed it, which isn't a good thing to do. Let's switch to here. How big is this? Might be a little bit big. I don't currently have a streaming schedule. Honestly, right now I've been working on just like getting back to streaming again. And I figured let's do that first and then figure out a streaming schedule. The hard part is that because I do work full time, and I don't know, I have no idea when we're going to end up going back into the studio, right? And when we do, that'll just throw a wrench into everything, potentially. Because, then all of a sudden that adds 45 minutes to an hour each way for me to drive. So that cuts into all kinds of time. But for now, like, I've been thinking about it for sure. And I want to create a normal schedule, but most likely it would have to be either first thing in the mornings or at night, just because during the week, I have to actually be available to work. So I don't want to commit to something and then not deliver for you guys. That would be very unprofessional. And then everyone would hate me. I think. Hey, Violet Pepsi. I think if anything, I would at least do like, hey, I'll stream regularly on these days. I may not be able to say exactly like the time right now, but I think soon I'm gonna at least hammer out 2 or 3 days a week that I will definitely stream. And sometimes just like posting that and saying, okay, that's what I'm going to do, just helps, because all of a sudden you're now accountable, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing. I just have to get there. Mostly, I think once the Kickstarter for the book wraps up, and I don't have that to focus on, then I'll put another commitment in its place. Let's bring her. Well, I need to bring her over. I just wanted to see what I did for her jewelry. Actually, let's she's still on there? Yay! I just want to see her jewels. Oh shit, I did give her a nose ring. I was like, I think I might give her a nose ring this time. Give me, I had a good idea. originally I was gonna give her one of those nose rings that then like has the chain to the ear, but I just feel like, I don't know, if you're like in battle or something, you're just asking for it if you have one of those. And she's kind of stranger in a strange land, so she kind of has to be ready for shit to pop off. Because people are a bit wary and maybe a little afraid of her. It's going well, Violet. How are you doing? How's everybody? I'm actually doing... It's weird to say, but I'm actually doing very well in this pandemic landscape. And not like I'm happy for the pandemic at all, because, you know, I miss being able to go out and see people. But man, I love working from home so much more. It's like any time I ever considered going back to freelancing, it was simply because I miss working from home. It's... working from home makes me very happy. Oh, are you writing then? Because that's cool. I love writing. Honestly, if I didn't draw for a living, I would have pursued writing. And I almost did, even when I was drawing for a living. I almost was like, you know what? I'd kind of rather write. And it's funny because I know a lot of people are like, oh my god, you should do a comic or a graphic novel or something. But the problem is, when I write something, I feel like it's done. I don't feel the need to draw it. I don't feel the need to illustrate it. So I've found that it's easier for me if I go the other way. If I draw something first, like in this case, it's character development for what I see being a novel, ultimately. Not a graphic novel, a written novel. And, I mean, there's no point in doing this, per se, for something like that. But it helps me. It helps me kind of flesh things out, visualize it. That's cool. I dig that. I know I don't go for like horror type stuff, but I do like more thriller type things. Big fan of like spy novel type things when they're done right, when they're done well. Although I have to say, I could not get into what was that one? Tinker Tailor something or other. Holy crap. I felt like that guy just got so into the language. Carr, right? I think that's the author. He just got so into the language that I would lose track of what he was actually saying, and I'd have to reread shit. And maybe it's just a British thing. I had no problem following the Bourne books. Ludlum. I mean, whatever. Ludlum's writing. It's not like it's amazing. And in fact, sometimes I'm like, has this guy ever done any martial arts at all? Because what he just described made no sense. And whatever, maybe he didn't. And there's probably no reason that he should have to. But as someone who did do martial arts for a long time, when I was trying to visualize what he described, it was like, dude, the body doesn't move that way. It's physically impossible. Oh, okay, so she's not actually changing reality in terms of fucking things up for everybody else. Because then you would get into a whole multiverse conundrum, and we have enough of those stories, right? Debating if I kind of want to give her a different kind of earring here. I love how I'll just be like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this, not remembering that, oh, I'm also gonna be painting this up, so how much detail do I want to put in here? But hey, I'm not doing a graphic novel, so I don't have to draw them a bajillion times. So I can go as complex as I want. So she does at least have a chain linking to here. And but in the battle arena, the chain would probably break before any damage to her ear. I'll play up this scarf a little more. Big fan of the look of head wraps and things like that. They're so cool looking. Okay, don't need her there right now. Oh, interesting. That's sounds like it'd be a fun one to write. Like a lot of potential, like interesting obstacles there. To think about really like what kind of hair I want her to have. I want it to be like really curly or just kind of wavy. I think probably more wavy. It could be tight waves, which of course I'll get into more in the actual painting. I'm always torn, especially with weapons, between going for something that is, you know, simply but tastefully designed and like well designed versus something ornate. Obviously, it should depend on the character, right? And she's got all this like jewelry and stuff, but at the same time, you know, she doesn't go crazy with lots of little accessories and things like that. So I might keep it a little simpler. Make it like a little paw style design, maybe. Little things. this stuff. She basically has these thin metal plates sewn over leather. In order to actually sell the idea that it could be any kind of armor. It is light armor. It's not like not meant to withstand, crazy blows or anything. It's not like plate mail, obviously, but the idea is that hopefully she's quick enough and skilled enough that the light armor will do just fine. Yeah, I wanted to kind of play with these different some different motifs, and my idea was that maybe she, like, this sword was actually gifted to her from someone from another culture, which is why I'm okay with the design of it not necessarily fitting in with the rest of her design, because I don't know, it just makes sense if someone from somewhere else were to gift a weapons master a very well-made sword that was meant to be used, I don't think that she would just be like, it doesn't go with my outfit. So that was kind of my thinking there. Yeah, it's honestly, Violet, it's tough to kind of land somewhere definitive with some of this stuff. This particular story, I still don't know exactly what the story is. I have these characters and I have some scenes and I know a bit of what they go through, but the initial story I was gonna tell. Now I'm just like, I don't want to tell that story. I don't care about that story. So how the hell could I write it and then expect other people to care about it, right? So, but I like the characters a lot. And I really love some of the scenarios that are in my head. And so having to kind of keep on playing with with that stuff and see if I can't kind of arrive at something that is maybe more along the lines of what I am feeling. The other reason I decided to give her a spear, well, one, that's like her main weapon, so I don't know why I didn't give her a spear in the first place. But also, I have another character that already has a staff very similar to the one that she's holding in this other image. And I'm like, let's not just give everyone the same staff, right? Although everyone does seem to have either a staff or a spear right now, but mostly because they're travelers, and like in her case, she just doesn't. She kind of trusts her own 2 feet more than a horse necessarily. Plus, she doesn't need a horse. She's got those long legs, and she can just cover crazy distances. So, get in. What are you doing? The cat sees a squirrel, and she wants it. So anyway, point is, a walking stick or a staff or a spear that can act as a walking stick, it makes sense for travelers. And realistically, depending on what station in life they come from, they may not be able to afford a horse. Not everyone, I don't think everyone could back in the day. I'm realizing I kind of probably want her spear to have a runnel if it's gonna be of any use at all. But one thing I will have on some of this stuff, like even her spear will have these little like engravings, kind of filigree sort of stuff. Although probably toward the center, I think from sharpening it, that stuff will have worn off over time. But we'll get into all that stuff here. So it'll have its own kind of ornate aspects, but the overall silhouette of her spear is going to be very simple. No, she's actually, so I'm working on a story just of my own that at some point I want to make into a novel. I don't actually play D&D. I have friends that do, and I've done work for D&D, but I don't know. The best I can say is that I get a little obsessed with art, and sometimes anything that takes me away from doing that feels like a chore. And so, you know, when it, like, even though I think D&D would be super fun, especially if you have the right crew to do it with, I just don't personally feel the need to take that kind of time off from doing art. Some people do, and shit, that's fine. To each their own, right? I feel like writing gives me a little bit of a break from art. You know, maybe I'll pick up my guitar or something. That gives me a little bit of a break from doing visual art, at least, right? Because writing and guitar are still art, still creative, but not in the same way. So it's kind of nice to be able to take that break, still be creative, but not worry about mark making. I don't know if you guys saw, I recently bound my own sketchbook, right? Because I'm very picky about sketchbooks, and I default to a moleskin more than anything because they're very nicely constructed. But I like the paper for some things, but then for other things it just doesn't work. I like working on mid-tone a lot, and there just aren't good mid-tone sketchbooks out there. Like Strathmore makes an awesome, one that has awesome paper, but the binding, and it's like, I don't know what they were thinking. The binding on it is like the wrong binding for paper that is so heavy. Because once you're like 3 or 4 pages in, it's really hard to fold those pages back because the paper weight is heavy. And so it makes it just tricky to work in. And it's too bad. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make my own. And I'm going to bind it the way that I would like it to be bound. Use the paper that I want to use. And that was super awesome. Super fun, rewarding. Always great to make something physical. I love that. So I want to do more of those. I'm going to do one with hot pressed watercolor paper next. I'm very excited about that. I'm just waiting for the paper to arrive because I'm very picky about my watercolor paper. So yeah, I'm gonna do that next. I don't know why. I'm not sure why exactly I put her on the canvas, because I literally have her up on my computer screen too. But that's cool. I guess it's for you guys to see. I'm debating. I still kind of want to give her that nose ring. I kind of like it. I think it's a fun little detail. And if I decide I really don't want it, I think I'll just simplify it though, maybe. Because otherwise it could get a little too busy. But I think it's a fun, just again to push her into culturally a kind of different place than the other characters we encounter. Get that. Get that spear. Hey, thanks for the follow, Machiavelli. Okay. I remember in school, I'd taken a digital landscape painting class with Rob Rupel, which is where I met him and became friends with him. But it was in that class I remember him saying that to really be good at this art stuff, like, you have to kind of get a bit obsessed with it. And I just remember I was probably just at the right stage to kind of hear that, but it really clicked. And at the same time, I remember it feeling a little strange that I was literally like deciding to be obsessed with something. You know, we have such a negative connotation with it. And I mean, obviously, like, maybe we want to try and find a balance in there as much as we can, but depending on the level that we want to do this stuff at, you know, we have to get a little obsessive with it, you know, and be a little addicted to it. You know, I get antsy. I guess you could say I start to get withdrawals almost if I go too long without doing some art. And too long means like generally more than a day. I can't really go more than a day without like putting some real time into drawing, not just doing a little doodle here and there or something, but like putting some real time into it. Because I feel the difference if I don't put enough time. You know, the muscle memory, it doesn't stay around forever. So, one thing I'm going to do before I go too far, because I always do this, and then, well, no, we can always do it on another layer. It's all good. I was going to do the straight line of the sword sheath, but we can always do that on another layer when we get there. I'm not going to worry about it right now. So initially I had, she has the armor plate slats, you know, down the front. It was almost like a separate drape, but I think I actually want that tunic, that kind of white tunic that she has. I think I want it to kind of be sewn together. I still like the leather strip on either side, but I think we're gonna get into some like threads. Of course, the only thing is that'll really change how that tunic falls too. But that's okay. Yeah, honestly, even before taking Rob's class, because we had to do so much sketching when I was in before that, when I was in animation school, it was already a habit by the time I went to art center to just draw every day. And it was really in animation school at Digipen that it was impressed upon me how important it was to make that a daily habit, right? Because all the professionals that I was looking up to at that time, some of which I still do, you know, they were drawing all day, every day, because they were doing it for work. So, you know, the drawing teacher was like, look, if you want to get to their level, you have to draw as much as they do, or more, if you want to catch up to them, you know, before, you know, like catch up to them while they're still alive, because they're still going to be drawing all day, every day. So if you want to catch up to them, he was like, you have to draw more than them, right? I was like, okay. It's the simple math. If you want to get good at this, you got to do it a lot. If you want to get better at it, you got to do it more. You want to get better faster? Do it more. And it really is that simple. I wish there was some kind of shortcut, but there isn't. Nah, I don't really wish there was. Otherwise, you know, everyone would be like, oh, I just want to draw for a living. And then no one would care. Now, her belt. I've liked what I had before, the kind of beaded thing. And it was a while before they actually developed the buckle, you know, that utilized holes in the belt. For a long time, they just had these belts that they tied. But the main character of the story has such a similar design. Well, sort of. I can change the buckle, I guess. Let's do that. I'm gonna give her a little more of an ornate buckle. Just because it would be sort of silly to base her on base her culture on Indian culture and then just go all like super simple with stuff, because they like their ornate things. I feel like they always have. So we'll get into detailing that shit out at some point. Yeah, maybe. One way to differentiate, we will put the knot over on this side. And I'm also realizing the idea of her belt in that original one works better than I think the actual belt would. Because I had all these beads sort of lining the belt, but I feel like they would just, it could still work. Let's do it. Let's stick with it. I like it. I felt like maybe the beads would just get pulled off by the buckle, but maybe she just has fewer beads around that area. How about that? They're actually pretty easy, to be honest. I have one. I don't actually like wear it. I'd gotten it for a Halloween costume when I dressed as a pirate, which was fun because I actually went and looked for like stuff for Renaissance fairs, which made a way cooler pirate costume because I actually wanted to like design my pirate, right? Because that shit's fun. So I looked at stuff for Renaissance fairs because then it's actually well made, and then I could keep it as a reference as well. So it wasn't just like a Halloween costume for pirates, you know, sexy pirate. So I actually got a belt that is real leather and handmade, and it's beautiful, and it's super easy to tie them. But right, and because I am a big fan of layers, if anyone has any questions too, just shout out. I don't mind answering some questions about anything. Could be art related, could be cocktail related. I'm like, what are the things I care the most about right now? Art and cocktails. Favorite cocktail to make in quarantine? For me personally, right now I am loving what I'm calling a Negroni du Martinique. It's basically a Negroni with rum agricole. So the specific rum I'm using is from Martinique, so I'm calling it Negroni du Martinique. Rum agricole is a French style of distilling rum, which is so much more tasty than the traditional molasses, or the typical, I should say, because I think rum agricole is actually a more traditional way. And I don't know why everybody doesn't do that, because it's distilled directly from sugarcane rather than being distilled from molasses, right? Which is already like processed and cooked sugar. So the rum agricole has a much more natural flavor. You can actually taste the grassiness in it, right? Because sugarcane is just a grass. And so you can actually taste a bit of the grass in it. And it has a very pleasant kind of sweet. It's not cloying like a lot of the other rum is. And huge benefit, does not give you the gnarly hangover that the molasses rum does. So it's just such a more pleasant taste, honestly. It's basically like same process as you would use to distill whiskey. You're just using sugar cane instead of wheat or barley or rye. And so it's delicious. Delicious. So it's just a Negroni using rum agricole instead of gin. Plus, I have been swapping out the Campari for Bruto Americano, which is made by St. George's. It's a little bit more herbal than Campari is, and not quite as bitter. It's still bitter. But it has a more natural flavor, so I like it. It's good. So right now, that's kind of been my go-to. Of course, on the weekends, my girlfriend and I make all different kinds of. I should say, she makes all different kinds of cocktails. And they're delicious. But when left to my own devices right now, Negroni. It's actually not. Honestly, you can get a rum agricole probably. Sorry, my cat just went a little crazy. Hang on. Let me feed her really quick. I didn't realize it's 5 o'clock already. Right, be right back. Come on, you want food? Yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah, come on. There you go. Okay. Yeah, no, you can get a rum agricole, like a white rum. Like if you look for the rum JM, they spell it RHUM, by the way. And if you look for rum JM, right? They make they do like a white rum that'll run you, I think it's like $27 or $30 a bottle. So I don't think that that's much more than Captain Morgan, to be honest. So it doesn't have, some of it, yeah, it gets much higher. Like I have some that's much more expensive, but you don't use it for cocktails. That stuff you sip straight and a bottle lasts you for a long time. So I kind of want to give her some more layers. All right, that's what I'm thinking about here. I keep going back and forth with this. But I'd want to make sure that there's a reason for giving her more layers and not just doing it because I like the look of it. Which sometimes can be a good reason, but I feel like not for her character. But it would make sense if she had something on underneath this, like, light armored tunic, because she's not going to have that on her bare skin. That wouldn't make sense. So I feel like we can get away with like some kind of a simple thinking a simple but like thick kind of linen deal. Let's see. And loose pants, which I think I might do kind of a drawstring thing on them, just because I feel like if shit goes down, she would probably want to tie them up a bit. So I feel like just having kind of a drawstring thing. Just for mobility, right? She'd want to be able to tie them up. Woo! Now I had those things going all the way, and they could, if they're thin enough, they feel like it would make more sense to keep her ankles a little more clear. Damn, I like those fitted boots though. almost wanted to give her more like sandals, which might actually make more sense given the cultural reference. I mean, if I really wanted to, if I really wanted to be a bit more authentic, I'd probably have to give her some of those crazy shoes with a weird pointy curly toe, but can't do it. I don't actually like those shoes. But I don't know, I kind of like an open toe thing. Like if she just... Maybe. So not necessarily a sandal, but like kind of an open toe deal, but we could still maybe put a toe loop in there. I kind of like that. I don't know. I feel like visually it might be fun. I may need to come back in and tighten up some of the drawing. It can be dangerous to leave too much for the painting, just because then you fix something in the painting and then it might bring to light all these other things that you need to fix, and that's not a good place to be. I might like either make them much smaller around her ankle just so that they maybe could kind of bend and flex much easier, or I may end up just breaking the metal slats in that area, knowing that, you know, she's got to be able to move and be spry. We'll see. Hey, Ergo Josh. Thanks for the follow, man. I was just watching your channel before I hopped on and started streaming. It was good stuff, dude. Yeah, those. I don't love those. Ooh, you know what though? I wanna... Since this girl's a warrior, right? Woo! What's up? Raid! Raid! Thanks for the raid, man. And we're listening to the Black Sails soundtrack, so like a raid feels appropriate. Oh, and James, you're here too. Yeah, hey man, thanks to both of you, Josh and James. That's amazing. You guys are amazing. Yeah, dude, it was great, man. Seriously. Both of you. James, I'm bummed I missed yours. Josh, I'm glad I caught yours. Well, James, I haven't been streaming all that much recently. Obviously I'm trying to get back to more. Oh, whoops. I should remember which layer I'm on. Whatever, I'm going to be flattening this layer down again anyway. This is just so we can get our sword sheath straight. I was watching. I wasn't saying much. I was in the process of sketching and doing some stuff in my sketchbook, but I had it on and was watching and listening and watching you do the roasts. They were great. Where do we go with that? Let's do more of like a wire wrapped kind of a leather handle. I think that and then she actually has a like a rosebud pommel. Actually, I don't even have a Patreon right now. I'm getting ready to start one though, because I know a lot of people have asked, and I think getting to do more of your own stuff is great. No, I actually work right now. I work full time as a illustrator and sketch artist in advertising. So I actually head up the illustration department at an ad agency in Hollywood. So we do movie posters and TV posters and video game covers and basically key art for entertainment. But I mean, we also do trailers and stuff. I just don't work in the AV department, so I work in print. Yeah, that's my day job. And it's great. I can't complain. It keeps me drawing, and a lot of our work is still pencil on paper, which is even cooler. Yeah, but so I'm just now getting into really kind of starting to push, I think, in my own directions. I have all these stories in my head that I want to tell, and it's like it gets harder and harder not to tell those. Yeah, dude, seriously, like getting to still draw with pencil and paper is pretty rad, and to actually like get paid pretty well to do it is even radder. Normally I would be working right now, but I have to wait on some stuff before I can jump in. And I know I'm going to be putting a ton of time into this stuff this weekend. We have a crazy ask for an illustration, so like, you know what? I'm going to take today off then, because I'll be going for 6 or 7 days straight after this. So I was like, I'm just going to take some downtime and do my own stuff. Okay, I'm liking where she's going, I think. I'm definitely going to have to kick that sword sheath back at some point. We can merge that down. So, yeah, it's been, it's been good. I mean, shit, I'm super thankful to have a full-time job in this pandemic, so I really, really can't complain about that. Just debating here what make sure everything reads clearly. Yeah, dude, I don't. Some people, I do not envy the position they're in, because it's not like normal times, or if you lose your job, you can just go and find another one, even a placeholder job, because right now, like, you can't even do that. And so, man, my heart goes out to those people, because even as an artist, like, I graduated school into the recession in 2008, 2009, 2010, and it was rough. I had some rough years there. struggling, not sure how I was gonna make rent and all that stuff, and student loan collectors calling me like, I mean, multiple times a day. At one point, I think I would get 5 calls a day from collectors, and stressful as shit. Not fun. Promised myself I was never gonna be in that position again. I mean, hell, you never know what life is gonna throw at you, but certainly gonna do everything in my power to never be in that position again. Because, it's stressful, it's like hard to be productive, and hell, it's hard to be a good human being when you're that stressed out. Alright, let's, cool. Alright, well, we don't need her now. Let's, throw in some flats. Flats. Well, mostly just one flat at first. I'm gonna lighten her a little. Feel like for this, how big is that? But let's put it on the right layer. Yeah, dude, it worked. There was a point where I was really like just pushing to try and like get clients to do things my way. But I hadn't been in the industry long enough to pull that off. And it kind of took some of that struggle for me to sort of realize, okay, wait a second. Let's do it their way. Let's get the work coming in. Get the word of mouth going, because I just wanted to work from home, because I was like, well, so-and-so just works from home, and I keep getting paid to like redraw their stuff or whatever, and so I should be able to work from home. At a certain point, you got to check the ego for sure, and just like make sure the work is there. And so as soon as I was like, you know what, okay, I'm gonna go into studios again. And for me, it was a big deal, because a lot of the studios were an hour, sometimes an hour and a half from where I live, if, given morning rush hour traffic in Los Angeles. I mean, come on. Traffic in LA sucks. And I live on the east side, so if anyone knows LA, driving from the east side out to Santa Monica in rush hour traffic, like that sucks. But I was like, I'm gonna suck it up. I'll do it, and then when I'm in good with them, then I can say, hey, look, if I can do this from home, then that means 3 hours more work, right, in the day on your sketches, rather than paying me to sit in the car for 3 hours, and really when I started doing that, it turned around so fast. All of a sudden I was turning down work, but only after I booked myself for like with no weekends, because I had gone so long with like such a drought in work that I just wasn't saying no to anything. And I think at one point I had like 32 days straight of just solid work, and we're talking doing 12 to 14 hour days every day, but man, I was so into it. Like, I wasn't even tired. I was just so stoked to have the work. Not to mention, that month paid damn well. And yeah, I mean, it was really like that struggle is what did it. And finally, I was like, okay, dude, I gotta change this, you know. And if you want things in your life to change, then the things around you have to change. So that's what I did. By the way, I'm just laying in this silhouette for anyone wondering, because I make strong use of clipping masks. So I tend to just lay in a silhouette and then do everything else with clipping masks on top. It's not the most fun to watch this part, but, you know, it's a necessary part of the process. Thanks for the follow, Edwinted. Yeah, it's weird to think back on those days too. Like, I mean, you know, sometimes it's a little uncomfortable thinking of that. Oops. Just knowing like what I was doing wrong. Plus, it's like the sense memory can kick in sometimes, and I just remember the stress of that, and it's like, fuck, dude, that sucked. But it's also good. It's good to kind of be able to go back there and remember, and again, like reaffirm that promise that. Meanie, thanks for the follow, Edwin, thank you. Oh yeah, I know how that is, right? With a name like Daniel, it's always taken. Which is annoying because so many of them actually go by Dan or Danny, and I'm like, dude, why did you take Daniel? You don't even go by Daniel. I go by Daniel. James, thanks for the sub, bro. That's awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna really not let you guys down, and I'm gonna keep streaming. I think before I kind of started streaming again, someone had given me a sub, and I felt so bad because then I essentially stopped streaming for a while, mostly because we got so busy at work, and I just didn't have the extra energy. Yeah, it was wild. Last year, I don't know what happened, but it seemed like someone just flipped a switch and everybody wanted illustration for everything. It was nuts. Before that, it was like, man, we would pitch illustration after illustration, and the clients just wouldn't go for it. And then it was like beginning of 2019, literally January of 2019, it was just, everybody was just like, hey, what if we illustrated this? We're like, gee, you think? What if? And then it was just like one after the other after the other. So, you know, careful what you wish for. Yes, bubblegum. Or I could buy like some kind of a nice. Actually, no, that wouldn't pay for a nice 22-ounce bottle of beer. Damn, when did beer get so expensive? No, when did my taste in beer get so expensive? Actually, I grew up in NorCal. I feel like we were always beer snobs. Even in high school. There was a hot minute where we went through like that phase of Mickey's 40s. Mickey's grenades and things. But for the most part, it was like Sierra Nevada was our cheap beer. Wine country. Snobs. What are you going to do? Actually, it was not wine country when I grew up. When I was growing up, it was apple country. And then when they were like, wait, but grapes grow great here. There's a lot more money in wine than there is in apple juice. Although cider, dry cider is awesome. If any of you have had Ace hard cider, that's where they originated, is my hometown. And Golden State cider, which is actually my favorite, also in my hometown, Sebastopol. But I won't lie, I'm more of a whiskey guy these days. Drink responsibly. And I mean that this art stuff is important, and you can't really do good art if you're, you know, not sober. A little tipsy might give you some bravado. Though, what do they say? Alcohol fuels creativity, coffee fuels productivity. Balance it accordingly. Yeah, I've done that before. I'm with you there, James. Yeah, there have been times where I was like, okay, you know what? I'm feeling too stiff. Like, the marks are just not interesting. You know, just like a shot to just like get that bravado going. It's rare though. These days, I'm more likely to just take the time to warm up properly than I am to rely on a shot of whiskey. Although this Black Sails soundtrack does make me think of being in the Caribbean, and then I miss the rum, and then I want some rum. Cool. One of the things I'll often do then, once I get this silhouette, by the way, is make the line layer a clipping mask, and because sometimes the lines will cover up sort of what's really happening on the edges, and it helps to see that. Whoa, giant much? It helps to be able to see that and refine that silhouette. Gonna take the time to do it properly, because then you don't have to mess with it. At the end, you can always then go in and smudge some edges where you need to, if you want to soften, the edges around the rounder shapes or the hair or whatever. Although the hair, I tend to come in and smudge pretty early on. So let's do that. Unless you're going really stylized, hard edges on hair, don't work great. And you don't have to get super picky on this. I mean, get as picky as you want, really. I mostly just want to make sure that the shapes I need are there. And then at some point I will do a layer on top that's not clipped to the silhouette, which will give me like fine-tuned control over the edges, because edges will make or break your painting. I am a firm believer in that. That's kind of my traditional side coming through there. It works for me. Yeah, that is very true, James. And that, to that point, I think it's really important for us to remember to have fun with this. Especially if you're working full time, but even if you're doing your own stuff, sometimes it's like you gotta still deliver, you still gotta produce, it's still a full-time job, and it's important for us to remember that this shit is really fun. Like, no matter what, we get to draw and paint for a living. I mean, granted, like, the years I worked as a barista back in the day, in my younger days, I loved being a barista, but obviously it was not my life goal. It was just way the fuck better than the previous job of being a security guard. That was boring. I think at the time, my friend and I, because we were both like really into martial arts, and we thought, hey, yeah, let's be security guards, and if anyone tries to start shit, we can kick their ass. No one ever tried to start shit. Which I'm very glad about at this point. Alright. Feel like her silhouette's feeling pretty good. Oh, except for that spear. Woo! It's a gnarly one, huh? So, just clean that up. Good enough for government work. Now, I don't want to paint her on white because gross. So let's just get a nice kind of, I don't know, a little something something going. Something with like some texture, I think. Yeah. It was funny though, like the benefit of the security job was that it was so boring. I actually had a lot of time to draw. Especially I worked security at this newspaper, and I would get there at let's see, 7 p.m. I think, and I was there till 2 a.m. So I mean, there was just nothing. It was just like a few people still in the building. I just had to do rounds every 45 minutes. So I would just sit there and draw for like 45 minutes at a time. So that was nice. Just trying to think of like what, because my idea with this actually, because once I paint her up, I do want to throw her into a scene. The idea is that because she is kind of stranger in a strange land, she goes kind of outside the town every morning or evening just to see the sunrise or the sunset. I haven't quite decided on which one. I think it's going to be sunrise because nobody's out really, and so that's kind of where she would be. She would be up on a little rise, like outside of town. So I think I want to just get some of the sunrise colors, just kind of hint at them in the background, so I can kind of paint against that. But me being me, and the painter in me just can't resist doing that, like, burnt sienna ground first. I don't know what it is. I feel like I always have to do that. I can't help it. Just want some texture. Even though, dude, all this is going to be completely painted over, it's just something about, like, kind of making it interesting looking for myself the whole way through is really important. Even if I know something isn't going to survive to the end, I still feel the need for speed. So we think she's watching the sunrise. It'll be kind of interesting because it'll be a bit front lit, though it could be off to the side a little bit. I'm just trying to think of what colors I want off behind her. Let's not overthink it. How about that? Get some of that pearly light of dawn back there. Big fan of the wet brushes and Procreate, by the way. Big fan. Yeah, I'm not like a perfect kind of gradient type of person. With very few exceptions. Sometimes I will just quickly set up a certain color palette, but in general, I don't like the gradients to feel too mechanical. I feel like it probably wouldn't be that yellow. Like it would be a little darker than that still, actually. But whatever. We won't worry about it. Let's push that. Warmer. I actually don't. I think because at this point what I tend to do is I will paint underneath the artwork and start to lighten, like kick the opacity down of the line work as I go. And so by the end I'm not usually left with that much, and it feels like a pretty natural process. So I'll paint under the line work to a certain degree, and then basically that'll allow me to establish my whole color palette, including the lighting, and then I'll just paint on top of the line work when I start to differentiate materials. So yeah, I don't feel like it's that tricky. But I definitely had to get used to that. Because there was a point, okay, I do want to do mountains. I just have to think about how crazy I want these mountains to be. I mean, I can always worry about that after, since I will be kind of throwing her into a bigger, at least a more horizontal illustration. So let's get some of this. I feel like that's just too hectic and stylized there. Especially if we want, like, we're gonna want some of that sunrise to actually be hitting those. I don't want to worry about this background too much right now. This is really just for me to paint her against. I don't want to sit here and mess with this shit too much. But let's get her up on a ridge of some kind. Grassy. I think we might put her on like a stone kind of outcropping. Okay then. Yeah. Put her on one of those like kind of broad stones. I'm not going to get into the material too much, at least not yet. I'll get into that a bit later. I just want the values there. It's funny, I'm trying to remember. It's like when we watch the sunrise, we're always literally watching the sun, and I'm trying to remember what it's like if you turn around and look the other way. And I know that this is not it. I feel like it would go more, it would be more violets and stuff on this back end. Not like these colors, you would get closer to the actual sun. So go a little bit lighter. Really like that color. Yeah, there we go. That's looking better. Because the fun thing is with the kind of cool colors back there, and she'll be like warmly lit from the front more. So I think we'll get some nice kind of color variation in there, which should be fun. There we go. Durr. Durr. Okay. I probably shouldn't get into getting crazy on these mountains right now. Alright. Fuck it. Let's get her colors going. Yeah, again, if anyone has any questions about anything, I mean, I can't guarantee that I can answer questions about anything, but I can give it my best. Okay, let's do. Let's figure out her skin tone. Give her that nice kind of rich Indian skin tone. It might be a little saturated. A little bit. There we go. That's a little better. How long have we been on? 2.5 hours? Huh. I told myself I was just like not gonna care because today is my day. I don't have to do work. Granted, I'll have to eat dinner at some point. I guess. That's the only downside. Well, probably not the only downside. One of the downsides of being really obsessed with art is that sometimes having to stop and eat is just annoying. Which is lame because I actually really enjoy food. I love to cook. The other nice thing about the pandemic and not having to commute into work is that I get to cook more. And I love cooking like curries, and I do a great like prawn or shrimp Cajun dipping broth that is absolutely delicious. But all this stuff just takes time to cook. Sometimes I'll get a pork shoulder and do like some smoked pulled pork, which is super fun and tasty as hell. don't actually need to be super clean with this particular part. Sometimes actually when you're laying in the skin, it's good to not be super clean, to let it overlap so that you don't have empty spots that you miss. You just have to pay attention and, make sure you don't miss spots. Yeah, that Cajun dipping broth, man, that stuff is delicious. But it's like a 2-hour process. I mean, most of that is just letting it simmer. It's like 15 or 20 minutes of prep, and then you're just letting it simmer for the rest of the time. Choosing your hair color, and I'm debating if I want to just do that like jet black hair where it like looks blue in the light, which I might do. So I think that could be fun. Let's do that. Blue. I should probably I always debate this one, but I think we'll have the lines be multiplied, which means we can keep them much lighter. We don't need to, because they'll darken as we add stuff under, so we don't need to keep them super opaque. I don't find hands that... I wouldn't say find them hard to draw. The thing with hands is you just have to... you have to take your time, I mean, unless you're just indicating them, in which case, super quick, whatever, really easy. But if you're not just indicating... So I gotta adjust this a little bit. If you're not just indicating, then you just have to kind of resign yourself to taking the time to do it, because they're detailed, right? And that's kind of the thing we always have to remember, is that hands can be like just as detailed as faces, and we spend all this time on faces, It's not to say we should spend as much time on the hands, because people generally don't care about the hands as much when they're looking at a piece, unless the hands are wrong. Then they care about them. Bastards. But so if you just gotta take the time to do them right and think through them. In this phase, I want the basics to be there, but I know that when I start painting them up, I'll be able to define those forms and make them make sense. So I just need the proper stuff in there for when I'm gonna be painting. But when I was in animation school, way back in the day, and I say that because that was 20 years ago now, we actually had an assignment where we had to, I think it was the midterm assignment, we had to do 6 pairs of hands and 6 pairs of feet, right? Drawings, nice drawings, with 150 preliminaries. So 75 pairs of hands and 75 pairs of feet. So, we kind of learned we learned to draw them after that. Alright. Get that. So, if you want to get a better handle, on hands and feet, that's one way to do it. I like that the Indians were always very into their eye makeup, like heavy kind of eye makeup. Getting a little bit of a little color variation in the skin. I don't want to go too crazy though. Don't really want it to read as like makeup per se. I just want more of the natural kind of color variations that we get. Wow, it looks so much lighter on the stream than what it is on my screen. I guess you guys will have to wait till I post the JPEG to see what the true color is. It looks like... You know what it could be, though? Let's see if... No, my brightness is up. Huh. Crazy. I thought maybe it was because my brightness was down, but no. Weird. Alright, well, I'm gonna put... I'll put her clothing and jewelry on a separate layer. I tend to keep the skin and the hair on one layer, and then the other stuff, I'll probably put her clothing on one layer and then jewelry on another. That sounds like a good plan. Alright. Clothing. Ooh. Colors. I think I still want the kind of white for the tunic, but I'm actually going to I'll end up putting some textile design on it, but I think I want the base color to still be like a natural white, kind of, you know, unbleached sort of deal. Well, Edwin, time to draw some hands. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, every now and then, yes, they can be frustrating. Like, there are times, you know, sometimes your brain just doesn't want to click into place. It doesn't want to see right. And, you know, this one poster I just finished, I kept looking at this one hand in there, and I knew it was wrong, and I knew I should fix it. No one was saying anything, though, because, you know, no one else noticed it. It's just me being my own harsh critic, as is usually the case. I realized this part of the hair is going to have to be on top, but whatever. And so I kept looking at that hand. I was like, I should fix it. And then the piece was actually going into finish mode. So I was like, all right, I gotta fix it. And it took way longer than I felt it should to actually get it right, because it took a while for my brain to click into place and see it right. Because and then when I did, I was like, holy crap, completely wrong angle on that one. And once I got it right, then, you know, I felt much better about it, and then it just sort of like snapped into place. It's like, oh, okay, I see what I need to do. was gonna make the leather like darker than her skin, but I don't know. I think it'd be kind of fun to maybe not have any of the clothing actually darker than her skin. I think it'd be kind of fun to maybe call attention to that a little bit. A little more. I mean, it can be close. So let's... Shit. That would get pretty light. Do not want to have anything in that. Shit. Well, let's see here. Or do we want to just darken her skin a little more? That might be fun. Yeah. She's been out. She's been out walking the world for a while, so we can do that. Let's cool it off. Maybe it started as like uncolored leather or something. Of course, I have a belt that started out as like completely undyed leather. So it had this like really light, almost like a bone flesh tone kind of thing. Bato, thank you. And hey man, thanks for the sub. I believe you subbed early on. Super appreciate it, man. Yeah, so I had this I have this belt that started out as like really light. You know, in the sun it could almost be like an off-white. And but now it's pretty dark because I've just worn it so much, and it's actually a pretty dark leather, so it could be kind of fun to play around with that idea that maybe some of the leather is newer and some of it could be a little older. And then of course also depending on where it is, it'll be exposed. Why is this so tiny? Could be more exposed to, you know, the oils in her skin and all that stuff, which will color it even more. So that could be kind of fun to get into. A little bit. It's the thing, like, man, you know, I'm not vegan, I'm not vegetarian, obviously, smoking pulled pork and whatnot. I do feel bad sometimes about leather goods, knowing that that stuff doesn't come in the most humane ways. Some places are much more aware and do it in a much better way. But I gotta say, I love the way that leather ages. It's pretty awesome. Any of the natural materials, to be honest. It doesn't just have to be leather. I'm getting into cotton and, you know, linen and that kind of stuff, and just the way that it ages and the character that it gains, I think, is pretty rad. And, you know, when I get into the rendering is when I'll really get into, like, texturing this stuff, which is super fun. I love getting into materials. One of those things where I used to not like it so much. I used to get really impatient with rendering, and now I really enjoy it. It's fun. I think after sketching so much, I got used to, or I started wanting a little bit of a change, you know, in my personal work, and so I noticed I started to slow down a bit on a lot of my personal stuff. Not always, but I noticed I at least started to really enjoy it when I did slow down. That was a lot of fun. Of course, this like spear shaft falls right down the center because there's actually like the metal slats on that center piece are actually in two parts, and there's a strip of leather or like leather cord that they're kind of sewn to right down the center. But whatevs. Let's get a darker slightly warmer tone. It'd be cool to do like a charcoal blue. It might be a bit much, but whatever. Let's get these. These guys in there. Rendering. Basically, so like right now I'm just laying in the flats, right? The flat colors. Then I'll do a multiply layered, probably just to throw in the shadows really quickly and start getting that lighting design. And then I tend to use an overlay layer for kind of just blocking in the basics of the light. And then the rendering is where I actually get into like really actually painting it up, getting rid of the line work, like painting out the line work and really rendering the effects of the light on the material, right? Because that it's really the way that the light interacts with material that allows us to see what kind of material it is, right? It's the light effects that let us see if it's, you know, smooth or rough, glossy or matte or semi-gloss, or whatever, you know. And I don't want to get into that kind of stuff right away because I tend to like to expose for either the light or the shadow. I don't know. There's always exceptions, right? Given the lighting scenario, there's so much light in the sky at this time that I think even the shadows, with the exception of a few shadows, wouldn't get super dark because there's a lot of ambient light bouncing around. But often I'm not going to have as much going on in the shadows. But in this particular case, I might actually have a bit more, especially on any of the stuff that's like metal or something where it has a slight reflective quality, right? So it'll, even in the shadows, it'll probably pick up some reflection, even if it's not receiving direct light, right? So when I say rendering, it's really just getting into that kind of nitty-gritty lighting information, lighting materials. Oh, what color do we want that headscarf? How did it kind of teal? I don't mind that. Actually, don't mind the colors that we set up before. Is this lagging at all? Sometimes I notice my computer every now and then in the last couple days has been funky. Looks like it's lagging. Don't like it. Okay. Maybe it's just on my end. Hopefully it's streaming out okay. It looks like the bitrate is fine. Maybe it's just mine coming in that's like... Because I've noticed that's where my computer's been a little weird. It is an old computer, so... Damn it, that hair got so dark I can't see my... I'll have to... I'm not going to worry about it right now. Anyway. Let's stick with that kind of teal, but... I want to go... I always find it's a good thing, it's a good idea to kind of keep everything from going too saturated, especially early on. Because once you start throwing different adjustment layers and stuff over the top, it has a tendency to saturate things more, especially if you do anything with like an overlay layer. So it's a good idea to keep your saturation. For the most part, I tend to try and stick to like the left half of the palette. Sometimes I'll venture past that, but not very far and not by much. Unless you're doing something that's very stylized, that is, a kind of more cartoony sort of world where you can get away with those crazy pops of color. I tend to find it better to stay away from that. No, the delay is actually because I have OBS set to a 5-second delay, just in case there's any issues with bitrate and stuff. That allows it usually to catch up. I used to have a longer delay, but then it was really weird. Like, people would, say something in the chat, and then it would be like this 15-second thing before I actually answered, and sometimes it felt just too long, so I kicked it down to 5 seconds, mostly just in case it drops momentarily, that usually gives it enough time to then pick it back up. So like I said, I have an old computer. It is about time for a new one. I'm just not relishing the idea of dropping the money on it. So I've been avoiding it and pretending like mine is just fine. Shit. So originally I have her with a violet kind of a cloak, which I think I might still do, because my idea with that is that where she's from, you know, if you think about the way India was, they had, I mean, silk, right? They like invented silk, woos, metal, right? Which is what we think of as Damascus steel actually comes from India. And for a long time, in Damascus, they actually had to take the iron, the steel ingots that came from India and forge things out of that because they didn't know how to make it themselves. So a lot of these things like originated there, and they had these very like vibrant colors that were not just relegated to the royalty, right? So I feel like it would be kind of interesting if she has these almost what would be viewed as royal colors if we think of a more European or Western culture, but to her they're just kind of normal, you know. And so I like that idea. So I think I'm gonna stick with that, but maybe go a little bit warmer than I did before. Maybe not that warm. Little lighter, little cooler, little lighter. Overpaint just to see where I had the hood ending. So, you know, she'll be walking around and they'll think that she's like, she must be someone really important, and they're also scared of her because she'll be like a head taller than most of the men. Poor little humans. So if anyone, for the people that missed the earlier part of the stream, I was saying like she's very much rooted in Indian culture. I'm half Indian, so I like to kind of pull from there when and where I see fit, which is most of the time. But so she's an elf, but I'm basing, and I'll probably come up with another name or not. I don't know. Sometimes I don't think it's necessary to reinvent the wheel, but in a lot of the old Indian mythology, you know, the Hindus tend to not talk about it as mythology. When they talk about it, it sounds like they're talking about history, right? They tend to have a very different view. Maybe it's because they have a written language that goes back like something to like 7,000 BC or something like that. It was, yeah, it's wild. Anyway, they have a culture, a very rich culture that goes back so far, and so they tend to, you know, just think of things in a little bit different way, I think, than we do. And I say we because I'm born and raised in America. So, but they tend to talk about the mythology a bit more like history. And so they'll talk about these things as, you know, to them they actually happened. And they say that at the time of like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and that stuff, people were taller. And there were different races, not all of them human. And those non-human races were significantly taller, like 7 feet tall. You know, and it's interesting because if you go to some of their really old temples, you know, that are 2, 3, 4,000 years old, many of the steps are really tall. You know, I'm 6'1", and some of those steps I had to like reach to climb them. You know, like they were uncomfortably tall for me. And we think of Indians as being short for the most part. I think the average height for an Indian woman is still like 5'1" or 5'2". Average height for an Indian man, I think, is like 5'6" or 5'8" or something. Though I feel like the younger generation is much taller. Or maybe it's just my family. You know, so it's really interesting to think, like, why would they make the steps at those temples so tall if the people weren't tall enough to climb them back then? So it's, I don't know, it's interesting to think about. So, anyway, point is, that's my thinking with her, is that she is very tall. When compared to the humans. Let's see. Let's adjust that. It's so interesting, next to all the muted stuff, that purple looks so saturated. And I mean, it's fairly saturated, but not like crazy. Contrast. All right. It's the only problem sometimes with start getting into these detailed characters. And it's like, shit, I gotta paint all this. But that's okay. That's okay. That's why we do it. I'm not entirely sure if I really want like all these different colored leathers, although I do, kind of what we were talking about before, I do kind of like the idea that maybe it's pretty much like the same leather. She just got the different articles of clothing at different times, so they're in different stages of aging. I don't mind that. I don't really think there's a way to totally convey that in an image unless I got like super specific with my leather reference, and then I would have to trust that the viewer is versed enough in leather aging to even notice. So who cares? But we know, and we think it's cool. So that's what matters. But I don't think I'm going to go as crazy with the bead coloring on her belt. Feel like that looks a little obnoxious. So I think I might keep it to kind of like certain like within a range of colors. It'd be kind of fun, maybe just like semi-precious stones, just like garnets and shit. That could be kind of fun. It's fun anytime you can play with some materials, and realistically I'd probably get into, because the belt would be more or less matte except in points of frequent contact friction, right, where it would be polished from use, but it would generally be matte, and then the garnets can be these little glossy beads. Oh my god, it's gonna be so many little highlights. I did it to myself. There's no turning back now. So I was just thinking of let's get a little color variation. Not that it really matters, but I was just thinking of materials, especially for like her buckle and the spear. But speaking of like Damascus or Wootz steel, I wonder if maybe we want to go that route with it. Wooz. I don't actually know how you pronounce that. It's W-O-O-Z. I don't know if it's a hard Z or if it's that wooz. Shit, I love the look of like a bronze kind of spearhead, but it makes more sense that if they can make steel, that it would be a steel spearhead. So let's do it. And whatever, I'm not getting into the details of it right now. I just want to differentiate it from that gray. silhouette. And the shaft, I kind of like in the original. Yeah, she's got a buddy. No, she doesn't. But I was kind of thinking like a white oak, kind of a wood, like a very nicely sort of polished white oak. So I think I might stick with that. Hey, thanks for the follow. So let's stick with that kind of white oak, which is really just very light. I mean, I'm probably going... We'll come up with some other name for it in the story. Like a bonewood or something like that, because it looks like bone, but it's super hard. And this part of the process doesn't have to be super clean because I know that I'm going to be, painting into all of this stuff, and it's really when I get into actually like painting and rendering, that's when I really start to address the edges a lot more. So this part of the process, I feel like I don't have to get too crazy with it, but I mean, obviously you don't want to make it more work for yourself. Ooh, that needs to be addressed. Don't make it more work for yourself. Almost there. Let's do like a DSAT kind of navy. More of an indigo. I think will be darker. Oh, I definitely will do the small highlights on the beads. I think it'll be cool. And I mean, literally, when they're that small, you just got to go through and do some dots, and then just pick a few toward the center, and you can spend a little more time. Meaning, like, a lot of highlights will often have like at least one soft edge on them. Not always, but. Right, those pants. What color do I want her pants? Shit. I don't know. Don't know. Did that just go black? Pretty much, huh? I'm definitely gonna have to lighten up her hair again, but for now it's fine. So let's go warm with that. Damn. I was gonna keep like all her clothing like more or less lighter than her skin, but I don't know. The pants, well, debating if I want to do a textile or something on them. I might. Like embroidery or something maybe would be kind of fun. Shit. Time to play around. She needs some green. It's the funny thing, like, remember one of the things that struck me the last time I was in India was just the colors that they could get away with, like, and they looked normal over there, whereas if you brought them over here they would look obnoxious and annoying, and yet there it's like it just looks amazing and awesome. And so that's where I'm wondering if, yeah, because it's not like she has to be camouflaged. She's not like stealthing through the forest or anything like that. So I could potentially go very colorful with her. You know, she's not in battle, so maybe she doesn't feel the need to, you know, wear drab clothing. So I might punch up some of the colors. But I kind of like that. I think it's kind of fun. Maybe a little more saturated. A little bit lighter, a little more saturated. Like that. It's kind of fun. I can dig it. Yeah. Let's not neglect some of this stuff up here first. I was gonna do just like, oh, gold, whatever, and gold pommel, but it's like gold is so soft that for an actual sword it doesn't make sense. It makes more sense to have stuff be like brass and something that can maybe serve a little more of a purpose. Pommel. The pommel of this will probably actually be dark for the grip. That. That's kind of a... Or bronze. Yeah, let's go a little warmer. Yeah, we can go hotter than that. A little bit. Maybe. Maybe. Actually, that is about right. Anyone have any plans for tonight? Although I don't know who's in the LA time zone. Might not be night for you. I don't know. What time zone is everyone in? Plans we can have, right? 4 a.m.? What are you doing awake? Holy crap. You're crazy. I haven't been awake at 4 a.m. in like... Well, except if I had to go to the airport stupid early. Other than that, I have not been awake at 4 a.m. in a very, very long time. Very long. Let's try this. Okay, let's get rid of some of that. I might change the color of this background gray, just because I don't mind if some of the some of that stuff shows through. I just don't want it to be gray. So I probably should have made it a different color before. Okay. I did the same thing actually when I was in animation school because I wanted to get really good at drawing, and so that's what I did. I would come home from class and draw from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. every day. And yeah, I was like 20, so I could handle it. Oh my god, her feet! Her feet! And yeah, man, it didn't bother me at all. I could do it. I did it every day, like 7 days a week. I would draw till 3 a.m. and then I would go to sleep and I'd wake up at 7:30. Well, on the weekend I'd wake up a little bit later, but not much. I would wake up at like 8:30 on the weekend. Of course, I could draw all day on the weekend. I didn't have to draw at 7 p.m. I didn't have to start at 7 p.m. So I want to do oops, that's wrong layer. Wrong layer. Whatever. And with the leather and stuff, we'll also get into, you know, color fluctuations when I get into actually like painting it up, or like rendering it. We'll get into, you know, areas that are a little darker from wear and tear, and parts that maybe are stretched a little bit more, so maybe they might get a little lighter. We'll see what we get into, but we'll definitely get into that stuff. Man, I like having all day to stream. But I gotta pay the bills. And they pay me well, so can't wait. I want the dark brown. Alright, that's our basic colors. 7, oh man, I gotta like make dinner. Well, let's at least get the jewelry blocked in real quick. I'm not gonna go too crazy, I just at least want to get, because she does actually have some gold. Quite a bit of gold. Indians do like their gold. And that shit does get saturated. But let's do this so we can actually see. And then what I might do, I'll probably break for a bit and eat dinner. Then I think I'll probably come back because I'd like to get more done on this. That's probably all I would be doing anyway, so I might as well stream it. I want to get into the lighting. Let's do this. Sometimes I'm actually amazed how saturated gold actually is, because sometimes, you know, I'm sitting there thinking of kind of real world colors and more muted palettes and things, and I'm like, yeah, gold's not like that saturated, but in my head I'm thinking more along the lines of like bronze or something. And then you actually see, you take the time and you actually see like polished gold, and you're like, holy crap. No wonder like people went nuts over it. But mostly in places where it wasn't common. And the common places are like, yeah, okay, it's pretty metal, but look, go down to the river, just reach down, you can pick it up. What's the big deal? These will actually be probably little pearl teardrop things on her. I don't know if I want her to have earrings on both ears. I can decide that later though. For now I don't really need to worry about it. Alright, we can turn this back on. everything. That little toe loop on the sandals. But what I also want to do is want her to have, give her a little toe ring. Indians like their toe rings. Supposedly, and I don't know if it's the actual reason, supposedly they always wore a toe ring on that toe because that pressure point relates to the uterus, and supposedly it strengthens the uterus. I don't know if that's the actual reason they did or if it's just a later discovery. But at the same time, I do know that ancient Indians were pretty damn knowledgeable. And even if they didn't have the same language to describe why something worked the way it did, they did understand it. Many things that to this day they haven't really been able to disprove. So, props to them. They smart. Cool. Okay. Basic colors. And we're gonna have to get into like a drop shadow here real quick because it's gonna annoy me to not have one. Even though I think it would be fairly ambient light, so this is gonna end up going all over the place by the end, but whatever. I just needed something to ground her a little bit more. So. Okay, alright. Basic colors. And suppose I should, maybe throw some of the jewels in there. I don't want to go too hectic, even though I know, man, they love throwing everything together. Emeralds and rubies and diamonds and sapphires, and they're just like, put it all into one. I don't quite have it in me to go that hectic. The designer in me recoils. So we're gonna keep it to like either diamonds or maybe they'll be pearls. I don't know, something lighter and simple. Cool. All right. Okay. All right, guys. I gotta go see about dinner. Yes, Edwin, you should sleep. 18 or not. Leota, it's 3 a.m. where you are. Why aren't you asleep? You guys are crazy. Leota. But thank you so much for joining. Dude, you guys are awesome. Thanks for hanging out. I will come back on in a little bit. What is it? 7:20 for me. I don't know, probably in like an hour or something. chill out a little bit, and then I'll come back maybe with a cocktail and get into some lighting. And whoever wants to jump back on, you can turn on the notifications so you'll at least see when I'm back, and it's up to you. Join me or not. Either way, the stream will be up and you can always watch if you miss anything. So thank you guys so much. Super appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you for the questions as well. Makes things more interesting. All right. Peace. See you in a bit.